Hello and welcome everyone across North America. This is John Garmendi with Sony's Professional Display Solutions of America, welcoming you back to another of our Tech Tuesday webinars. Today's webinar is entitled Spatial Workflows Unlocking the Power of Glasses Free 3D. And in today's webinar, we'll be talking about using our spatial reality display player to show 3D assets, using some of the plugins to view 3D assets as they are built, including Blender, Maya, ZBrush, and several others. How we can use spatial reality display for CAD and BIM viewing, and also using Unreal and Unity for custom content creation. As you know, we've developed these series of Tech Tuesday webinars so that our channel partners, customers, end users, systems integrators, and consultants can all stay informed and up to date on Sony's latest products and solutions. A few items of housekeeping before we begin. As always, please let this be interactive and submit any questions you may have for our panel via the in-event question panel. We'll be dropping links into the chat for any references that we make here during the webinar. And as always, all of our old Tech Tuesday webinars, archived Tech Tuesday webinars, can be viewed on Sony's YouTube channel. So with that, I'd like to introduce my colleagues. Joining me today will be Chris Feldman, our spatial reality display market manager for Sony Professional Display Solutions, and Dave Young, our visual interaction designer, user interface development. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris, and I'll meet you back here for Q&A.
Thanks, John, for that introduction. I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone for taking time out of your day to attend this Tech Tuesday. And for those of you watching later, we appreciate your time and appreciate your willingness to learn more about Sony and its products. So yeah, today we're going to talk about the spatial reality display, right? We're going to do a little bit of an introduction about what it is and how it can benefit you. We're going to go through how it can be utilized through workflows and help optimize that process across various use cases. We're going to cover some key features and supported software and round it up with that Q&A and closing. And so right now we're going to start off with a little introduction for those who are not familiar with the spatial reality display. What is it exactly, right? And so the spatial reality display, we like to refer to as the next evolution in display technology. So what it is a device, or a display, I should say, that allows real-time 3D volumetric displays, providing glasses-free 3D experience. So what does that mean? So what you're able to do is you're able to view a file in 3D as an object in front of you. It's not just like a 3D movie that you see, where when you sit down in a theater with your glasses on and you look at the screen, you're going to have that same visual experience no matter where you sit in that theater. With the spatial reality display, because you're dealing with real-time volumetrics, as you move around, you can actually look around the object. You can look above it, below it, to the side, anywhere your position is that can affect how you're actually viewing that object. And so what that does is it enables professionals to approach their workflow with greater efficiency and work with real-time rendered objects, right? And so in a professional capacity, things like rapid prototyping and 3D printing are very prevalent in the industry, and all of those things take time and money, right? And so what we're able to do with the spatial reality display is an intermediary step, so to speak, between the time it takes to print or create a rapid prototype. And so because you're dealing with it as an object and you can view it as an object, see all the different size, see any kind of issues you would have with interferences or things where things might become an issue, or just to double check clearances. All that's available to you, just like it would be, is if you 3D printed it or rapid prototyped it. So we also have a real-time rendering algorithm that we combine with a high-speed vision sensor that's going to provide a best-in-class and superior, comfortable 3D experience. And so, a lot of concern or a lot of discomfort using 3D comes in from the lag that happens between the content that's being presented and what the viewer is seeing. And so by combining this high-speed vision sensor with the real-time rendering algorithm, that produces a very comfortable environment and a very smooth looking model that you're looking at in front of you. And so it just creates a user experience, not unlike using a standard display that you're already used to, but now it has that 3D effect to it, right? And it's allowing you to view that object in 3D. And so, those two combined together really make for a comfortable viewing experience. And again, as I mentioned before, we're able to supplement rapid prototyping and modeling to save money and time, right? We all know how busy all of our lives are, at work and everywhere else. And so anything where we can actually shave time to help with efficiency and just move things along faster and to increase profitability, that's always a good thing, right? And so with the spatial reality display, it's going to allow you to do that. And it's very simple. Think of it like an IT desktop. In the past, when I've shown this in demos, some people can be a little intimidated by it. But think of it no different than the screen that you're already using on your desktop to view this Tech Tuesday, right? It connects via HDMI or DisplayPort, and it's a USB-C connection to that computer. And then that's it, right? Essentially, you're just running whatever software that you're running to do your normal workday, and then you're off to the races. So it's all very simple. It's all very straightforward, and it's nothing that's going to be too difficult for you to integrate into your existing workflow. And so what we're going to talk about now is we're going to move into 4 different ways that you can use the spatial reality display within your workflow to leverage this new technology with what you're using. And so the first way is to use the spatial reality display to view 3D files without needing any kind of special software or tools, right? And we offer something called the Spatial Reality Display Player. And this is a free-to-use software that's available on our website to download. And it allows you to take a model that's already been created, say an OBJ file, GLTF file, most major file types for 3D models. You can then import that model into the Spatial Reality Display Player software. And then you can see in the screen here that it shows up as a list of files that you can view. And you simply use your mouse and keyboard, click on what you want to view, and then that object will be viewable as a 3D object in front of you. You have the ability to also set it up as a demo. So if this is something that was client facing or customer facing, you can have a number of products or projects that you're working on that would all link together, and then you can show them in order like you would for a standard media player. But now instead of just viewing a video file, you're now viewing those files in 3D. You have a number of great little options like adding backgrounds, adding background music, setting it up so it can run as a kiosk mode, so you don't have to worry about anyone pushing a button to turn it on, turn it off, changing an input, and that sort of thing. And it allows a lot of really great flexibility for a user to integrate this into that part of what you do every day. And so again, you're already using a 3D file, and so you just have to export it out as one of the compatible file format types. You're able to import it into it. You can transfer files off a USB. There's nothing special or proprietary to make that happen. And and you just have a huge amount of flexibility that allows you to leverage being able to view 3D files. But again, all the work is done for you, right? There's nothing custom or special that you need to design or build. You take the existing files and formats that you have, and then you're off to the races. You're ready to go to view it as a 3D object. Okay? So from there, we'll move on to the next way we can use it. And this is really one of the more exciting ways that we can leverage the spatial reality display. And so what we have are plugins, and the plugins are available for download off our developer site. And normally when you work in 3D, you'll have your orthographic views where you can view each file as the top, bottom, and side view that you would normally do, and then you'd have a 3/4 view. But by utilizing our plugins, you can view that file in real time as you work on it. And so as you're building something, you can see it without any kind of distortion or flattening in 2D. You can view it as an object file on your SRD in tandem while you're working on it. So as you make changes or corrections, change colors, swap parts in and out, by using the plugins that we have available, all of those run without any kind of exporting needed or any kind of outward difficulty, right? And so you here in the example you can see on the screen, there's a box that was created on the left, and on the right hand side you can see the boxes there existing, and that could be anything, right? In this case, it's a box, but it could be an engine, it could be a motor, it could be a part, anything along those lines. There are different viewing controls, so you can zoom in, zoom out, rotate around the product or project without it having to be affected on the part itself. The screen itself actually has a button on the top that can allow you to actually turn off the 3D, so you can have multiple viewers view it. So if this was something that you were working on and you wanted to call a few colleagues in to collaborate, that would allow you to do that as well. So you can just push the button on the top, it would turn off the 3D, and now you could have multiple people viewing the object at the same time. And then you can push that button again to view it in 3D to get that look and feel of the product as a object itself. It's fairly straightforward, and once it's up and running, it just runs naturally in the background. There's nothing you need to do or export or anything along those lines. So with that one, we'll move on to the third way of using it. And the third way we have is our CAD BIM viewer. And so we have a lot of consultants that are out there that are very interested in this product. Architects, engineers, designers, we all use CAD and BIM files. There's a lot of metadata that's installed into that BIM file that's important, that we utilize every day, and that we need to have that information available. And so what we can do is we can take your file in what format that you're using, say it's a Revit file, and then you simply go into Revit and go into Twinmotion, and then you save that file, and then you can open it up in our Datasmith viewer, which you can see here, and then that file in real time will pop up, and then you have full navigation tools that you would normally have in Revit, but now you're viewing that product in 3D, and none of the data or the metadata that I mentioned earlier has been lost. And so all of this kind of goes together and works together to seamlessly integrate with what people do every day for a living, right? And so you have these products here, you want to be able to view them, and you want to be able to create an environment that is, matched to the effort that goes into building these things, right? A lot of the times that we have, especially when we're customer facing, there's not a lot of understanding about, what it takes to go into creating these files or what they look like, right? People just kind of want to jump from the initial scope of work into the final product, right? And that's just not how it happens. But utilizing a product like the spatial reality display helps to kind of bridge that gap, because now you're viewing it as an object, and it creates that, or it helps with that visualization for those who are not normally versed in 3D, to be able to understand what they're looking at and what they're working with. And so with the CAD BIM viewer, again, this could be customer facing, this could be internally used for review. Anywhere that you would normally utilize these files or review these files, it just works out of the box. There's nothing you really need to worry about. At Sony, we've worked very hard to design and build this product, so that it's something that you can use as seamlessly as possible. And we're continuing to refine that and improve those aspects of how the product works. And then the fourth way that we're going to actually talk about this product is with our ability to work with Unreal and Unity. The spatial reality display itself works natively with Unreal and Unity, and I'm actually going to turn it over to Dave and let Dave talk a little more in depth about how that works within the display.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. As Chris mentioned, we have full SDKs for Unity or Unreal Game Engine. And it's what that means is you can basically, it creates a camera rig in one of those packages, and that's kind of a stereoscopic camera rig. So you can use Unity or Unreal exactly how you use it today. All you really do is replace our camera with the built-in, the native cameras in one of those packages, and then the SDK has all the tools in the background. So when you just build it and run it, it'll run on the SRD. So there's no learning curve or any real extra knowledge you need to make it happen. So it's actually very cool. And in addition, like Unreal has like a live link, and you can run live streaming content right on Unreal. So, for example, we have a Mocopi, a mocap system that allows you to do real-time motion capture. You can actually see that happen in real time in 3D on the SRD. So if you have other applications, you robotics or something, you want to see something going on in real time and view it in 3D, or have a client or something view it in real time, that's an option as well. So we're really fully integrated in these packages, and it works really well. It looks beautiful. It's hard to on the 2D, when you're seeing it on a flat screen, it's really hard to understand just how nice they do look and how well it does work on the SRD.
When a user is utilizing something like Unreal or Unity with the spatial reality display, what are they looking at as far as lag time between when a person creates a change or makes something move and to when it's actually rendered onto the SRD?
Well, it depends on how you're doing it. So there's two methods here. So a lot of times you're probably just building your world, or you're building your environment, and then you actually just save it as a executable file. So you build it out, and then you have an executable file, and you run that. So then that's obviously a little time. If you're doing like the live streaming, it's actually very little lag. Again, I've seen it where we've done full like motion capture, and almost very little lag, almost no lag. So the actor is doing their performance, and you can see it right there happening with very little lag. It's actually pretty impressive because that goes over the Wi-Fi, and it works very well. So it depends on how you're working with it. It's just it's a cool tool. Now, there are tools. I think Datasmith's one of them. There's other bridges that go right from, say, Maya or something into Unreal. So you could, if you're updating from Maya into Unreal, and you could see it on the SRD. That's also ways to do too, by going through Unreal that way. So there's a few different methodologies for using the tools, and SRD is again, fully supports Unreal and Unity. So if you can do it in that package, you're probably going to be able to see it on the SRD.
So you mentioned Maya working with Unreal, right?
Yep.
So what does that workflow look like? What do you open on your computer? What is running, and how do you view that on the SRD?
Yeah, so there's actually what's really cool is Maya has its own plugin directly in Maya. So you certainly you can do the Unreal. There's the bridge into Unreal from Maya. That's I think that might be an Unreal plugin. I'm not quite sure who makes that plugin, but we actually have a proprietary plugin for Maya that allows you to take the viewport. So any of your viewports in Maya, you can change. You just go and select, saying instead of using viewport, you use the SRD, and then it'll instantly come up on the SRD. And so you can just work natively in Maya, and I can move things around. So I'm in my regular 2D viewport, and I'm doing a character or a robotic arm or something like that, or a whole workflow. I can see that update right in real time on Maya, and I don't need to go, if I'm not an Unreal user or something, and I'm just a Maya user or whatever, I can still utilize the power of the SRD, and it's actually quite nice. So that's instant. That's a beautiful way to work and visualize that the Z space that you get there. Just really lets you visualize your product. Let's say you're looking at a watch or some other part. Seeing it in that 3D space is magical almost, because it's almost like it's there in front of you. So in a 2D environment in CAD or Maya or something, you're constantly moving it around, looking at the perspective view, and just trying to get a nice view in your head of what it looks like in 3D space. But there it is in 3D space. It's actually really useful, I found.
So with tools like Unreal, you have a number of, aspects that you can control, such as lighting, shading, and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
How many of those are supported on the SRD?
Uh, it's quite a bit. I think I haven't looked. We try to pretty much keep up as like Unreal might come up with some new tools, and then we'll quickly work to do a release to help to if there's new lighting schemes or rendering schemes or whatever. I think I haven't checked lately. I think we're up to 5.1, 5.2, and we support most, if not all, of those lighting kind of processing effects and that kind of thing. Again, sorry, you probably look online and it'll give you more updates on exactly what we're supporting, but it's pretty robust. The engineers have worked hard to really integrate fully with the Unreal and Unity engines, and as we understand that as they upgrade and update their product, we if we don't support it, the engineers do work hard to support it for the SRD.
That's great. So one thing, in line with what Dave was mentioning, is we do aim for a minimum of 2 updates to the SDK a year. I believe the next one is on schedule for October. And what we try to do at each one of those releases is not only add additional features, but we're also looking to improve what we're already working with. And so, obviously there's, bug fixes that we have that we've come out with, and we also have earlier efficiencies that we also release. So, you always want to look for those. And then when new SDKs or firmwares come out for the display, you always want to make sure that you're working on the latest one. And so with what, we were saying is supported, the ability to utilize Unity and Unreal can really take what you're doing, especially from a presentation level on your product or with your workflow, to a next level, because you can really create an environment to present with what you're working on to that commercial level presentation, right? And so instead of having a PowerPoint slide or a printout that you would normally utilize to present to a customer, you could create commercial quality environments that you're, say, if you're working on an automobile, right? Instead of just having an automobile as a render, you could have that automobile within an environment, whether that be a garage, whether it be driving on the highway. It would be fully animated, and you'd have realistic lighting and reflections, almost as if that actual car was floating in front of you on that display. And so it's an incredibly powerful tool that we have at our disposal, that we can utilize with this type of technology.
Yeah, no,
And
yeah. Sorry,
yeah,
sorry. Yeah. It's just it's having that feeling of a realistic, the thing in front of you. Is just I do a lot of shows and I put it. People just step up and they're just blown away as soon as they step up and see it. They just can't believe their eyes how amazing it is. We've had like say again like watches or something there, and we've had some people just like are just stunned at how beautiful it is and how it looks like they could just they try to put it on their fit it on their arm and stuff. It's it's a powerful tool for helping people understand a 3D object.
yeah. And we put a lot of effort into it, right? So the Bravia color engine is actually built into these displays as well. So you're getting that cinema quality color and contrast that you can utilize. And the first 3 tools that we showed were fairly straightforward with how you could work with your workflow, right? So the first one was just to kind of visualize something, quickly without having to do anything too fancy. The second one was leveraging, these plugins that we're talking about, so that you could work and see it as a real flow object in real time. The third one was to view, more or less the finalized object, right? You're looking at a finished building, or whether it's a stadium, or whether it's whatever product it is. But this fourth one, utilizing Unreal and Unity, that's really a next level approach to workflow, right? It's really going to kind of push the impression of your company, right, to that next level, because it's not what people normally can do, and it's out there for everyone to use. And again, we work natively with that Unreal and Unity engine
Yep.
to provide that that next level visual experience, combined with the color and capability that we have with the Bravia engine built into the spatial reality display.
Yeah, that's so true. If you're just used to working in CAD and you have to make a presentation and you can take your object into Unity Unreal and you have the you know you can just learn a little bit about that, you can actually probably make it a pretty dazzling presentation of that in one of those tools to present to the client or stakeholder. Um, it's a little more wow and punch, because then those tools are made for video games and movies and television shows and stuff. So if you wanted to add a little dazzle and stuff to it, it's really kind of a nice way to present your project, your product.
Yeah. And one thing that we also leverage a lot here at Sony is partnerships. And so, if all this sounds great to you and you're interested in doing that, but you just may not have the resources or the time, we do have partnerships that we can connect you with those that actually develop around Unity and Unreal, so that you can get the help that you need to make that development happen. There's a number of ways that we can address it, but it's always available to you that we can leverage, as well as the other technologies that we have here at Sony to combine with the spatial reality display. As we have been demoing these out in the market, one thing that's really great is combining something very large with something very personal, right? And so there's been a lot of traction with our CLED product to gain interest from viewers that are walking by in a space. And once those viewers have been then pulled in, then they can sit down, and then there'll be an SRD in front of them where they'd be able to view objects, floating in front of them, whatever those may be, if they're product or whatever whatever the design is intended for. And so there's a number of ways that this product kind of works together as an ecosystem, so to speak, that you can leverage within your space and within your workflow. So I believe with that, we're about ready for the Q&A.
All right, fantastic. And there are plenty of cues, so we'll jump right into it. Chris, I'll toss this one over to you. I think it is in line with your role and pretty simple. So Blaze asks, how difficult is it to connect the spatial reality display to my workstation?
So connecting it, as I mentioned before, is not difficult at all. It's fairly straightforward. You're looking at a video connection of either an HDMI or a DisplayPort cable. So whichever you prefer, or whichever you're currently using. And then it's a USB cable, both of which are included with the display itself. The only caveat is that you do need to be on a Windows machine, and you need a decent video graphics card, right? So you need to have a 3D Passmark score of 18,000 or higher, which is fairly mid-level at this point. But fairly straightforward. These run off laptops and mini computers as well as towers. The more you're going to obviously push through it, the more you need to be aware of what you're going to need to run it. But the overall minimum requirements to get everything running is fairly straightforward. There's nothing too fancy.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. We've got a question here from Nasir asking about the licensing fees, or are there any licensing fees involved with using the plugins?
So there are no licensing fees right now for the plugins. All right, everything was developed in-house by Sony in conjunction with those software makers. Right, so there's been a fair amount of testing that has gone back and forth, as well as QC, and the plugins are available on our developer site for a download. And later on, I believe we'll put up a link so you can actually find out more about that. But those are available. You just download it and install it on whatever Windows device that you want to be running the SRD, and you're ready to go.
And the one other thing, the SDKs are up there for Unity or Unreal right now, so you can download them anytime. You won't see it in 3D if you don't have an SRD, but you can load the SDKs and load the stereoscopic viewer and just see how it works. right there. That's free.
Okay, great. Next question is from Pavel. And Pavel asks, which controllers are available to interact with 3D objects on the display?
So for the controllers, again, just think of it as a Windows device or Windows HID device. So any device that you can get to work on a Windows machine as a controller will work with the SRD. So obviously mouse and keyboard. We like to say a PlayStation controller, but an Xbox controller will work as well. You can use something like a Leap Motion controller. You can use an IR or laser curtain. Anything that you can get to work for interactivity or control on a Windows device will work with the SRD.
Yeah, you can build them into, like we've done demos with Leap Motions and controllers, mouse and keyboard. Different people build different demos, and it's whatever they can make work in Unity or Unreal, basically. And there's a lot of SDKs for, say, Leap Motion. You want to do Leap Motion, they have an SDK. It's fairly easy to hook up in Unity or Unreal, and then of course when you build it, it'll be in 3D. It's actually pretty powerful. We've had Leap Motion with like a watch where people can reach into the display basically, and then grab the watch and pick it up and turn it around. So very powerful demo.
Okay, we've got another hardware related one. Jeff asks, are there plans for a screen that's larger than 27 inches?
Ah, it's always the question, right? No matter what size screen I show you, everyone wants a larger one. But yeah, we actually have a update to our SDK that's coming out in October, where we'll be able to arrange the SRD into an array with up to 4 displays. And so you can do 1x4 high, 1x4 wide, or 2x2, or whatever iteration. So you do 1x3, you can do 1x2, obviously. And they would all work off a single computer, right? Obviously, you're going to need a fairly complicated graphics card at that point, but you can turn your 27-inch into a 54-inch at that point by putting it into a 2x2 array.
Okay, and just confirming, 27 inches, the largest we have today. We also have a 15-inch, correct?
Correct. So we got the 2 sizes available today.
Okay, this is a question from David. Listen closely because it's a long one. Some use SRD to pre-visualize content that they'll be putting together on LED volumes, for example, in a virtual production scenario. This seems to be very helpful for a director. But can it go deeper? For example, a cinematographer to use to pre-visualize depth of field as they configure LED virtual backgrounds with live actors, etc.
Wow, that's an excellent question. So thinking about how that would work, you would need to create a camera, and Dave, you'll need to correct me if I skip over anything here. You would need to create a camera in Unreal or Unity. I'm assuming you'd be using Unreal in this case, that would simulate the depth of field of the real life camera that you would want to utilize, so that when you have that feedback from Unreal onto the SRD, it would be an accurate representation of what you're going to look at in real life.
Yes. Yeah. I always say if you can get it into Unity or Unreal, then it's possible. Yeah. The depth of field. You'd have to mimic it in the Unity. It's actually an excellent question. Again, if you can do it in Unity or Unreal, then chances are yes, you can do it. But it wouldn't be like a live. I couldn't, to bring like a live person into it, they have to be digitized, like volumetrically scanned or captured in real time, or however you do it. So you would need a virtual person in the virtual world, whether that's a real person in mocap or that kind of thing to previs. All that's possible, and that's actually very good for previs. Like our Mocopi stuff is really good at you just strap on the sensors and you dance around and you can do your whole previs with that and see it on the SRD. So Theoretically, yes. The answer is yes, it can be done.
Thanks, Dave. We've got a follow-up question from Pavel. Pavel asks, which third-party 3D applications are currently available for SRD?
So for the direct plugins, we have Maya, 3ds Max, Blender, and ZBrush, and more are in development, but those are the ones available today. And then with our CAD BIM viewer, which should be released closer to October as well, that one's going to give you significantly more. Can't go into too much detail on that yet, but you're looking at a lot of uh, more of the CAD style software, such as Rhino, Revit, AutoCAD, those types of applications for that level. And so that's what you're looking at today.
Thanks, Chris. Also, just a side note, we had dropped in the chat a link to our Revit file library, hosted by BIM Object, where all of Sony's professional products are available as Revit files. So all of our flat panel displays, direct view LED, SRG cameras, which I know Chris had showed before, and a number of other professional display products. So please take advantage and access those objects as you need them for your designs. Question from Uzoma, asking, are there any particular feedback or use cases in academia for spatial reality displays, like improved and faster learning of CAD in a mechanical drawing course?
So in academia, there are two main ways that the SRD is being used. There's a lot of medical education traction with the SRD. Being able to take what you would normally see as a slide or a cross section of a patient, and then be able to view that patient as well a patient, right? You're viewing them as a whole person, right, with that real time imaging data. It's also a really great tool for pre-operation planning, or I should say pre-surgical planning. So unlike normally where you would look at the slides or the sections, and then you would go through and look at what you would create as an approach for your surgery. Now, because of this tool that we have, you can view that patient as a 3D volume, and then you can use reveal tools to help with the planning, and you're dealing with the actual patient data as opposed to something you're just interpolating from slides or from cross sections. So that's been really helpful. And there's also an area in robotics that's been really great too, where you have students that are trying to learn how to use a robotic surgical tool. Typically, what they'll do is the doctor or the technician who's operating the robot and trying to show people how things are done. They're looking through a very complicated HUD display that shows them a three-dimensional image of what they're looking at in front of the robot, right? And so they can understand why they're approaching things from the angle they are and sewing things in the way that they are, that type of thing. But for the class, they're just viewing it on a screen or a large display, right? And they're not seeing that volume. And so now you could take, a 15-inch and put it in front of every student, and now they're viewing that in 3D, just like the person who's viewing it through the HUD. And that's actually helping speed that process up, because there's a greater level of comfort that comes in through that, because it's giving them the same experience as the person who's actually doing the presentation or the demonstration of that robotic tool. Moving on to the engineering and design side of things, it's kind of a twofold. One, schools love it because you have the ability to showcase students' work. So whether they're designing something, even something like art or architecture, they can show that in 3D. Engineering students can highlight the parts and other things that they've created. And it's a great way when you have visitors or people that come through. In addition to the products that you would normally have on display, you could have the SRD there or a number of SRDs all running to show just a greater volume of the students' work in that space. And you can also show a number of things that might be too large or even too small for things to see. Imaging, say, for an electric vehicle that was being designed as a graduate program, that would be difficult to have in somebody's lobby, right? But with the SRD, you're able to put that there and leverage it. And then also, again, with the different tools and plugins that we had earlier that we're showing, it's helping with, going to things like 3D printing and rapid prototyping because they're viewing it as that object. It's easier on the students because, they don't have to wait in a queue. They don't have to send it out to print. And hopefully it goes well and there's not an issue, right? And they come back and there's a lot of back and forth. And, the unique hurdles that we have, the higher education system, right? They're all still there. But just with the SRD, it kind of helps circumvent that. It just creates a better workflow overall. And just, again, there's almost a semi-tactile experience to viewing the SRD. It's one of those things where, once you show it to someone and they see it working, you really can't describe it right adequately in words, right? You really need to see it and experience it for yourself. And that's where it's really strong in this workflow space or in the engineering and design space, because it goes a long way to see areas or issues where they could arise because you're viewing it as an object. There was one time I was doing a demo with a vehicle that builds aircraft. And this customer was looking at it, and one of the engineers that was viewing it was lamenting the fact that, man, he wished he had it 6 months earlier because there's a particular module that was being built where there was a fuel line that went through a very important aspect of the build that they weren't able to understand until it was actually being built. And so the SRD would have been very helpful in visualizing that before they even got to that point. And it would have saved them a lot of time and redesign. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot that's kind of being leveraged with it. And one thing I do want to encourage is we do have a demo process available. So work with your Sony rep, and if you yourself are interested in it, or if you know of someone that's interested, or you're a reseller and you're out there and you have a customer that would be interested in this, please let us know. We'd be happy to put a demo kit in your hands, and it includes everything that you need. It has our 27-inch spatial reality display plus a computer along with content. And if they have 3D models of their own, we can help load that onto the SRD so they can see their actual model working and not just their demo content. So that is available for you.
Good. It helps to eliminate the need for a headset. The barrier of wearing an actual head-mounted display. If you don't need the full 360, that's a big barrier for a lot of people, and so and you're closed off, and there's some nausea associated with that and stuff, and so it's actually very, very useful in that respect as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Dave. And yeah, that was an excellent question. Thank you, Uzoma. Really appreciate that question. We've got two questions from Jorge and John that are essentially the same, asking about the ability to track the eye movement of more than one person or use the display with more than one viewer.
So the display itself is designed as a workstation, right? So it's designed for one person to be sitting in front of it to be able to view it. We do have the ability to have multi-viewers, so you can have two viewers. So when someone would walk up to the display, the sensor at the top would essentially look at the people looking at it, and it'll automatically define who is the most optimal user, and then that person will then be assigned as the primary user of the display, and the 3D will be orientated to that user. Everyone else can still see the screen and can still see it running. It'll look similar to what you would see if you walked into a 3D movie without your glasses on, that weird kind of ghosting or doubling effect. So it's still there, but what you're getting is only one person. But in the setup file, you can actually set it where you can have two users. So when you turn that function on, there's a function button on the top of the display. And so if you push that, it'll actually automatically switch between the primary user and a secondary user. So it looks for the next most optimal person, then that person's assigned to view it in 3D. So when you push that button, it'll actually rotate the model like the primary person was viewing it, so they can see what they're talking about, and then you can switch back. So you have that ability. But then again, you also have the ability to turn it off, as I mentioned earlier. So you can actually view it as a 2D monitor with the screen running. And one important thing to actually point out is the micro-optical lens that Sony has built into our display. It actually allows you up to like 179 degrees of viewing. And so with some of our competitors, when you view it off angle, the screen will actually go dark or go to black when you move outside of the visual cone of where the 3D is supposed to work. And so with ours, you can actually be off to 179 degrees, right? So you can be almost completely off to the side, and you can still see that the screen is on and running. So that's one major point that is nice to leverage, especially when you're going to have a number of people. If you want to have 10, 15 people around this, obviously you can't be within like a little 40-degree window in front of the display. So you can have people kind of crowd around and look at it.
Thanks, Chris. Question from Dennis. Any plans for a Fusion 360 plugin?
So I can't share too much about that. I will say that Fusion 360 is a very popular title, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to identify the largest market share, right, to kind of set the hierarchy of what we're supporting. So we have a number of supported products that are in the pipeline, and hopefully you can see something for Fusion 360 soon.
Okay, we're getting close to the end here. Question from Ruth: Is SRD portable?
Technically, the display itself is not heavy. It weighs about the same as like an IT desktop monitor. So the 27-inch would be a bit large for a backpack, but the 15-inch definitely you can do that. There's a bracket on the back of it which you can actually remove with a simple tool. You could load that into a backpack with a laptop, and then you can carry that onto a customer site. And like I mentioned earlier, connectivity is simple and straightforward with just an HDMI and a USB. So yeah, you can definitely do that with the 15-inch. The 27-inch as well. If you had something that you could carry the 27-inch, like I said, it's not heavy. If you want to use something like a Pelican case or something along those lines, you'd be able to easily move that onto a customer site as well.
Thanks, Chris. Not a question from the audience, but the last question did spark or remind me of something. We do have a couple of partners as well who have developed articulating arm mounts for the display. Is that correct?
That's correct. So Peerless has one, Premier Mounts has one, Chief has one as well, and probably forgetting a few others. But the 27-inch actually has a VISA 100 mount on the back. So you can take a mount that you'd normally have for a desktop and attach it to it. The new SDK that we're releasing allows you to mount between the 45-degree angle that you would normally have with the included mount and up to 90 degrees. So you can mount it even on a wall if you'd like. So we have a certain degree of flexibility with that. And then we also have, as John mentioned, partners that allow you even greater flexibility with the articulating arms that you can attach it to.
And looks like the final question from Naomi asking, is there a cost to use the spatial reality display player software?
No, that is actually free to use as well. So you can simply download that and install it. It'll look for all the necessary components it needs, and if the software doesn't see it, it will then download and install them for you. So it's fairly straightforward. And the new version that we just released is really great because it will auto update. So it'll allow you to update it without you having to go in and check to see which version is the latest. So if you wanted to use this in, say, a kiosk application where you had, say, you want to put together a lobby experience where people would walk in and view the work that you guys are, putting together on those displays, you'd be able to, view that, and then you can update it from that screen itself without having to go to the website.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Dave. We are actually a little over time, so I appreciate everyone's participation, everyone that joined us today. Thank you so much for the questions. They were insightful, and hopefully you found this webinar useful. Again, as Chris recommended, please reach out to your local Sony account rep or one of our many channel partners, and we can arrange for further conversation, demonstration on site, and so on. Looking to work with as many of you as possible. So with that, we're gonna wrap things up here. Just want to mention that you should mark your calendars for our next monthly Tech Tuesday webinar, which will be on September 24th. And then we'll be discussing our new version 2.0 firmware update for our SRG cameras for auto framing. That was released at Infocom and very well received. So please join us for that. And also a reminder that we're going to be kicking off our AV Tech Expos starting next month in Chicago on the 17th of September. And then 5 cities after that, including New York, Atlanta, Dallas, Denver, and wrapping up in San Diego. So be sure to look out for more detail on those upcoming roadshows. And by all means, please plan to join us. So thanks again, everyone. Please stay safe and look forward to seeing you again. Take care, all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.